Hi everyone, today we're delving into one of the most compelling figures in One Piece, Admiral Fujitora, otherwise known as Isho. Known for his caring nature and moral strength, Fujitora is an incredibly astute marine who strives to prioritize the lives he can save over the number of enemies he can defeat. But what does his approach really mean, and more importantly, how has his conception of justice shaped the world of One Piece and the way in which the world government and navy operate? Let's explore and uncover why Admiral Fujitora is the world's sharpest marine. The Dressrosa arc is a turning point in the One Piece narrative. For the first time in the story, we see a marine who possesses both the stature and resolve to instigate real systematic change from within the rigid navy structure. The navy, as a military force and face of the world government, have always been a complex institution. While many top-ranking marines had previously played crucial roles in relation to how the navy operate, none have left a mark quite like Fujitora. In previous arcs, marines like Ex-Admiral Aokiji and Smoker have questioned the system in which they operate and sometimes even acted against the institution's interests. Even someone as virtuous as Garp, who exercises more freedom than most within the navy, fundamentally went along with the corrupt structure for decades, for better or worse. But Fujitora's presence and contribution in Dressrosa and thereafter stands out. His introduction and contribution bring a new dimension to the Marines, showing that all of them are not bound by the same rigid, often brutal interpretations of justice, but they can also actively facilitate radical reform within the organization through their actions. It is important that we examine Fujitora's philosophy before proceeding, namely, his sense of justice, which has been dubbed honorable justice. As noted earlier, Fujitora prioritizes the lives of those that he can save rather than concerning himself with the number of enemies that he can defeat. But this is only part of his philosophy. Fundamentally, it would be fair to say that he'd enact justice based on what he thinks is fair and honest. To determine what is fair, Fujitora puts an emphasis not just on actions, but also the integrity of the person in question. Fujitora's blindness in this regard is more than just a physical condition here. It symbolizes his ability to see beyond appearances and understand the true nature of people and justice. One of the key moments that highlight Fujitora's philosophy is his awareness of the world government's manipulations, particularly the cover-up in Alabasta. He knows the Straw Hats played a significant role in liberating Alabasta from Crocodile, yet the world government twisted this truth to demonize them. This awareness shapes Fujitora's actions in Dressrosa, demonstrating his commitment to a more nuanced and compassionate approach to justice. Fujitora's first encounter with the Straw Hat Pirates is vital in shaping Fujitora's plan during Dressrosa. When Luffy helps him in the restaurant as he is being cheated out of his money, it's perceived as more than just a gesture of goodwill. Side note, it is debatable if Fujitora already knew that he was being cheated or at least suspected foul play, given his extraordinary observation abilities, and perhaps it was a test to see if the Straw Hat Pirates would intervene, whatever the reality. Luffy's honesty and directness impressed Fujitora, adding credibility to the idea that Luffy might be a man of virtue, as implied by his actions which liberated the oppressed country of Alabasta. This also painted the other Straw Hat Pirates favourably in Fujitora's mind, and this is made apparent when he expresses regret for having to stop them when briefly battling Zoro. I want you to keep this idea of association in mind for the rest of the video. Given Fujitora's ability to read the emotions of people, if so many of the Donkode pirates are harboring so much malice and deceit towards a blind old man, what does that say about their leadership? Overall, the encounter in the restaurant is crucial because it shows that Fujitora values actions that align with his moral compass, even if it means denying and defying the world government's expectations as he decides to not capture the Straw Hat Pirates then and there. While it is debatable if Fujitora was testing the Straw Hat Pirates like I say, it is quite clear, although seldom mentioned in the community, that Fujitora did test both Law and to a lesser extent Doflamingo himself. When initially insisting Doflamingo, the Admiral is interested in if Law is genuinely an ally of Luffy or just another pirate with his own nefarious agenda. Would Luffy, the man who had made such a good impression on Fujitora, associate himself with such a bad apple? This test is important, not just for evaluating Law's integrity and character, but also for assessing his potential as an ally against Doflamingo. Law admits being Luffy's ally despite the potential consequences that await. Now, you could argue that Law was only honest to buy time, as he says, and that might be true, but from Fujitora's perspective, if Law were to lie and instead sell out the Straw Hat Pirates, for example, it would be a damning verdict on his character. Fujitora subsequently uses his meteor attack to test the combat prowess of both characters, if Law could handle this. Perhaps he could be a very useful asset later down the line against Doflamingo. Similarly, assessing the combat ability of Doflamingo was also important. It is important to note that at this point Fujitora is still somewhat constrained by Doflamingo's position as a warlord, and even the added government protection afforded to him because of his ties to the Celestial Dragons. You could say that I am reading too much into this sequence given the fact that Fujitora later helps capture Law, but please do remember that Fujitora's plan did ultimately hinge on pirates liberating the country. Fujitora's confrontation with Doflamingo also reveals much about his character. When Law questioned how a tyrant like Doflamingo could wield such power that would allow him to manipulate the news even, Fujitora displayed intense discomfort as it was an indictment of the institution in which he operates. This encounter highlights Fujitora's discomfort with the status quo and his struggle with the world government's corrupt practices, and he later outlines his main goals to Doflamingo. His plan in Dressrosa is both bold and strategic. By later threatening Doflamingo and announcing his intention to abolish the warlord system, Fujitora challenges a deeply entrenched system of injustice. His approach is not just about dismantling the warlord's tyrannical power, but also about signaling a broader shift in the world government's policies. Additionally, his monologue was in the presence of King Ruku, and I'm almost certain that this was a deliberate signal of hope to King Riku. The tyrant who is tyrannizing your nation will receive his due comeuppance, and I will do everything to minimize the damage. During the chaos of Dressrosa, Fujitora chooses not to intervene directly despite finding out that Doflamingo under the protection of the world government was oppressing a population. Now, he and his soldiers have ample evidence. Instead, he allows the citizens and the Straw Hats and even Law to lead the fight against Doflamingo. This dishes and underscores his commitment to a form of justice that values collective action and empowerment over authoritarian intervention. It would be remiss of me, however, to not mention the fact that Fujitora's actions raise significant ethical questions. On one hand, Fujitora risking the lives of some citizens might be acceptable if it leads to a greater good and fewer deaths and suffering in the long run. From this perspective, Fujitora's willingness to gamble with lives for a larger cause could be seen as a necessary sacrifice. But wouldn't this be in conflict with his philosophy that prioritizes the number of people that he can save rather than the number of enemies that he can defeat? If Fujitora dealt with Doflamingo sooner, which he had the power to do so, he could have minimized the suffering of the population sooner, yet he gambled on Luffy and his allies triumphing to push his grand plan. In his defense, he was conflicted throughout the entire arc and was visibly experiencing immense anguish, and did fundamentally successfully accomplish his goal.